Hej, witajcie z Ameryki na bieżąco, jak zwykle z Las Vegas. Dzisiaj ostatni dzień targów NAB. Chwila refleksji po tych kilku dniach tych targów. Na pewno przytłaczający rozmach. Aż dopada taka jakaś depresja. Powiem Wam szczerze, ile tych nowinek, ile tej technologii tam jest dostępnej, które my nie widzimy, a którą bierzemy za taką po prostu daną nam. Ma być na czas, telewizja, sport, animacje, a tak naprawdę jest mnóstwo rzeczy dziejących się za kulisami, których nie widzimy. Kolejna refleksja, ogromna konkurencja. Naprawdę ogromna konkurencja właściwie w każdej dziedzinie. Dlatego to też się tego nie widzi, prawda? Ale oni tam muszą rzeczywiście walczyć o klienta z takimi ogromnymi produktami. Widzieliście te monitory, ogromne produkty, ogromne monitory. Najpierw 1080, HD, 4K, 8K, już widzieliśmy montowanie filmów na żywo w 8K, nawet montowanie filmów w 8K poprzez chmurę. To znaczy, że ktoś powiedzmy w Nowym Jorku zrobił część montażu, a ktoś w Los Angeles drugą część montażu. I to nie jest, że oni ściągają sobie jakieś tam proxy filmy, tylko dosłownie dokładnie tak jakby przez chmurę po prostu takie ogromne pliki normalnie montowali, więc to mnie naprawdę przytłacza mnie to tak naprawdę. Dlatego z tego właśnie powodu postanowiłem po prostu odreagować. Małe piwko w zacisznym miejscu, tak aby można było. Nie ma zacisznych miejsc w Las Vegas, ale tak czy inaczej już teraz Was zapraszam na wywiad z Januszem Kamińskim, który niezwykle rzadko udziela wywiadów. Także zobaczcie, co miał do powiedzenia twórca takich filmów jak Szeregowca Ryana, Lista Schindlera, to te dwa filmy, za które dostał Oscary. No i mnóstwa innych filmów, które teraz widzicie tutaj obok na ekranie. Wiecie, co macie robić, kciuki do góry, dzielcie się kanałem i filmem z innymi, komentujcie, no i oglądajcie do samego końca, jak zwykle, trzymajcie się, cześć!
What made you think cinematography was going to be a path for you?
Well, obviously, as you guys realize right now, I was born in Poland, which was under the communist regime. So our ability to travel outside the communist regime, communist countries were very limited, and our ability to learn about America and Western world was pretty much limited to music, culture, and movies. So my understanding of America came from American movies of 1970s, which in my opinion were the best movies in the history of American cinema. Particularly movies like Easy Rider, Taxi Driver, that's a bit later, but Easy Rider, Welcome to Jimmy Dean, Vanishing Point, all those movies that would evaluate and analyze during that time, current political and social situation would be embraced by Polish viewers. So I love American cinema, and I believe that movies have power of changing one's life and destiny. And consequently, when I came to America, I wanted to make movies simply because of the American movies and Western European movies. So I left Poland in 1980, came to United States in 1981 as a political refugee. Had to learn a little bit of English, started film school in Chicago, started attending film school in Chicago. I did my BA in Chicago. It took me 5 years. Being Polish, takes a bit longer. And then I went to AFI, and pretty much after AFI, started working for Roger Corman Company and filming, second unit, a little bit of a television movies and a lot of low-budget semi-exploitation movies. Never done porn. Never done a lot of like monster people running in rubber suits and stuff like that. But occasionally, women getting murdered. That's as far as I would go. But no pornography. Not even soft porn. I've done decent movies, in my opinion, as a beginner, as a young cinematographer.
So another graduate of Roger Corman's school. That's great. So why cinematography? Like, did you have a vision thinking, You love these movies. Why not? Most people want to be directors initially. Why cinematographer? I'm curious about that.
Well, it was a very mundane reason. At the Columbia College, we were divided in groups, and there were four participants in each group. And one had to direct, one had to shoot, one had to act, one had to produce. And literally, I got the little stick with
Like in the drawing, yeah.
I got the camera and fell in love with ability to make images. Fell in love with the whole technical process, and also I like the whole idea of having a concrete profession. And also I have to talk about the instrumental person in my life who was at that point he was a teacher at the Columbia College. His name is Chris Swider. He looked at my little 100 feet of black and white film and he says, "It's pretty good, you've got talent there." And I think this is the first time anybody told me that I was good at anything. I had a tough upbringing, not to say that Daddy was monster, but Daddy was good, strong Eastern European man. And, you know, he never really told me I was good at anything until this man in film school told me I was good at it. And I just embraced that and started filming all the student films at Columbia College. So by the time I finished Columbia College, I had about 35 20-minute long films that I could build a little reel, and based on my student reel, I got my first feature in Hollywood.
So before we hit that, we will soon. We were speaking before the session, and when I asked you when you came to America what your expectations were, you said, "Well, I didn't want to be like any other immigrant. I didn't want to necessarily have a construction firm." You went to a city filled with Polish immigrants who worked notoriously in the building trades and things like that. And you went in a world. You wanted to be in a world with artists and creative people, correct?
Correct. I was inspired by movies, really by American cinema, but also there's a history of Europeans working in the industry. There was, you know, Miloš Forman, there was Polanski, obviously there were some Russians working in the film industry. So I pretty quickly realized that it's a very tolerant industry that can accept foreigners, industry that we as the foreigners can maybe make a little imprint. And, you know, but primarily I want to make movies because of the power of the movies and how artistic the movies are, at least they were at that time, and the power of the storytelling is still very, very, very essential to many people and can change people's lives.
So we mentioned at the beginning, obviously you crossed paths with Steven Spielberg, and that changed your life for sure. Right. Schindler's List came along, which was a landmark movie. It was your first feature, correct?
No, it was a...
In America?
No, it was about fourth or fifth picture.
Fourth picture, okay, sorry.
But definitely the monumental experience.
1993, right?
And I don't think I could have done this movie knowing what I know now, simply because the pressure of working with Steven, for Steven, and what he represents, and he represented then already, I was not aware, I was still a bit ignorant and not really familiar with the whole Hollywood.
You were an innocent. You were kind of naive in that sense.
I was naive. I was not innocent. I was naive.
You won an Academy Award for Schindler's List, and you won an Academy Award for this movie. We're going to show a clip from Saving Private Ryan. Probably, many of you in this room, I'm sure, have seen this movie, and you've probably seen this section of the movie. But look at it again with fresh eyes. We're going to show kind of a neat part of the clip. It's when the beach is actually stormed by the Allied soldiers. And it's roughly about a 24-25 minute section, I think, from start to finish, right? Give or take?
You have to watch the whole thing.
The whole thing, yeah. We're not going to show you the whole thing because that would take up half the panel. We're going to show you a snippet of it now, and then we're going to talk a little bit about it afterwards. Can you roll that? spared you some of the more horrific aspects, if you can say that, as the scene goes on. Some of you might remember, we cut before that. But one of the things about this panel we're talking about is how Janusz's career has transcended over many, not many, but several eras of filmmaking. This was made in 1998, 20 years ago. You just were here for a panel on Black Panther. And we're now in kind of a different era of filmmaking, and Janusz and I talked about that. And the first question I asked him after I watched this was Janusz, you have to go shoot this scene again. What would you do differently? You've got green screen, you've got digital filmmaking, you've got a lot of other tools that might have made it easier to conceive and execute the scene. And your answer was?
Well, my answer was I wouldn't do anything different because the original approach was the right approach. I believe in organic filmmaking. I believe in things being photographed as the story unfolds in front of you. I particularly don't like CGI movies. I don't like green screen. I try to avoid those movies by all means, but sometimes you just draw into it because of the relationship you have with the director. But there's really no reason to shoot this movie another way. And as the movie goes on, there are really kind of a very semi-experimental techniques that I've used for this picture, and the images were really created organically on the negative. I played with the shutter speed, I played with the frame rate, I played with the photochemical processes. I've altered the lenses that I've used to have a little bit of that low contrast quality where the light bleeds through images. So a lot of experimentation took into this place and took into making this movie. And once you kind of imprinted that into negative, there's really no way going back, And I can't really imagine that a whole bunch of CGI guys would be able to achieve such an emotional result with doing this after the movie was made. Because there isn't really a clear view of what that should look like. That has to come from the filmmaker. In this case, I take full responsibility for creating those images. Of course, I have to give tremendous credit to Steven, who was not afraid to seeing those images, because they were very powerful images in terms of what they represented emotionally.
Yeah.
And the power of the director comes from being able to accept and realize the beauty what's given to him or her and use that. And in fact, he didn't see the dailies for several days. And this is when I was still younger, working out and being really thin. I would have a treadmill and I would work out during the lunch. And the assistant comes to the trailer and says, "Steven wants to see you." And I'm thinking, there you go, going back to LA. And he just looked at the images. He was just looking at the dailies 3 days after me. And he was completely in love with the images and truly said, "Can we do more of this?" I said, "Of course we can do more of this." And we'll continue with that through the course of the movie, except the middle part where the story becomes a little bit more conventional.
Right.
But we'll come back right to a similar technique when we are at the Rommel, which is the final battle sequence.
So this scene, in its entirety, has been hailed as one of the finest representations of warfare ever filmed. And we're talking about a narrative film, obviously. And that's not coming from me or a critic or an audience. That's coming from military veterans, people who have been in war. When you set out to conceive the scene with Steven, what were the overall kind of goals? It's structured so beautifully. Again, we only watched a clip of it, but it goes from the setup of the characters, the intensity of what's going to happen, into the water, which is moments of actual poetry, which is kind of creepy, how you could have visual poetry during a scene like that, but I find myself watching it and watching those underwater scenes and saying, "Oh my gosh, those are beautiful," which is a very conflicting feeling. Which I'm sure you wanted. And then it goes on to the beach, and then it goes up to the bunker finally, and up on the hill. What did you set out as you conceived of the scene of the various parts of it, let's say? Was it broken down in kind of like a symphony in a sense of part one, movements, or how was it broken down and then executed?
Was a big question, but we will reduce it to some easier answer. I think the war visually could be a really spectacular event, right? Emotionally, there's nothing beautiful about the war, but if you just take emotions away with the color of the flares, the flames, and the blood and all that stuff, and the uniforms, it could be a really beautiful thing. To me, I wanted to create emotions that I feel genuinely realistic. And I'm talking about emotions of the viewers. So if you look at other movies, and I'm not going to use any titles, but other movies did not reflect the horror of the particular event. There were some Russian movies, My Name is Ivan, made by Tarkovsky. There was another movie, Come and See, which had tremendous poetry and very realistic reflection of what the war felt like. But none of the recent war movies made me feel like I was experiencing the real life. Same with the documentary footage. If you look at the Second World War documentary footage, you don't really feel emotionally involved in the images. You feel intellectually, and you understand intellectually the horror of the film, but there's no visceral reaction, simply because the combat cameraman would not want to get killed, so everyone was shot with longer lens. The camera was always hidden. The Vietnam War was a different story. Now the equipment became smaller. The need for sensational material was in demand. So the combat cameramen from the Vietnam War, they were participating in actual events much more than the Second World War guys. We were not creating, we were recreating war, nobody was dying, so the immediacy of the images by the sheer reality of how we were making it permitted the camera to be right there with the soldiers. So when the operator fell down and he got a little bit of dirt on the lens, that made it more realistic. When he got a little bit of the fake blood on the lens, that made it more realistic. So those are the tricks and techniques I've used to bring the audience closer to the subject matter.
I gotta think those blood spots would get painted out now digitally.
Well, now they become part of the vocabulary, so people use them these days. But you know, prior to 1996, you would want to paint them out because that would be the technical mistake, right? You know, and I've tested everything. This is not like, hey, let's just do this and that. I've done very extensive photographic tests, you know, including the photochemical processes, including the mechanical manipulation to the camera. And every time I would look at the image, I wanted to be moved by the image, you know, and I would see the dailies, and some stuff was just bizarre, completely not applicable, and other stuff was very real. So, for example, all that shaking of the, you know, I've used by just shaking the camera, and then we used a drill with the bit hitting the camera, and then we've learned there's a little device called lens shaker, manufactured by Claremont cameras, so we only had one, so we took that device, you know, so you start experimenting with the image to make it feel real. And I always do that before every movie. I have to create visual language that I can present to the director, or visual language that I feel comfortable with, visual language that makes me respond to emotionally to the material.
I'm always curious with a cinematographer, you know, actors say they can't watch themselves in a movie after they've done it, or if they do, all they're doing is picking apart their performance. When you watch a scene like that, which is now, you know, so imprinted in cinema history, it's been seen a lot, it's been shown a lot, I'm sure everyone in this room has probably seen it. What do you feel? I mean,
I'm good. I'm narcissistic enough to like it. Yeah. I also know when it's no good, so don't get me wrong. I know where I was like screwing around, not paying attention, and the results are right there on the screen. We're having a little bit of dyslexia, and you know, I'm good for 45 minutes, and after 45 minutes, I get a little bit bored with things. So we get another 15 minutes. There's a clock right there. No, I know when it's good, and I know when it's bad. And I know when people are better than me, and I know when I'm better than others. So self-criticism and self-awareness and being able to be objective about your work is essential to get better at it. So yeah, I don't mind looking at good work. You know, I mean, I've done some movies where, you know, you look at the Cool as Ice, the movie with Vanilla Ice. There's some good stuff in it. And nobody knows Vanilla Ice. There you go. Ice, Ice Baby. Yeah. So I know when it's good.
Okay, so we are going to move on, and we're going to take a huge leap now forward in the career of Janusz's career, quite a leap. And you heard him say just before he's not crazy about CGI filmmaking, but hey, we're going to show you a clip from Ready Player One. So you cannot get a movie nowadays, probably. Maybe 50-60% of it was done in a computer, 60% in a computer, and about 40% live action, which was Janusz's contribution. So we're going to just look at that clip real quick, and then we're going to kind of talk about that from one extreme to another. You rolled a Ready Player One.
Ready Player One. Welcome to the Welcome to the...
Last clip for me.
More weapons!
Anti-personnel ordnance cannon!
Anti-personnel ordnance cannon!
Kill Z! Kill Z! Trap this little guy! Fucking Chucky! Move, move! Go, go, go!
I saw this movie at Warner Bros. Before it came out of screening with my 12-year-old son and my mother-in-law, who's 77, and they both loved it. And I loved it too.
It's a nice movie.
It's a nice movie.
It's totally Stephen's vision, not version of vision. It's a version of the book, Stephen's version of the book, and his vision. 100%, he's a genius when it comes to making movies, as we know. I would say my contribution was 40%. All the live photography, I done it myself. A little bit consulting, a little bit of color corrections. But you know, safe to say that there's also another side to what I just said. The visual effects guy, the ILM people, the artists, the geniuses from ILM used other movies that I've done with Stephen, and they applied the lighting style and aesthetics from previous movies into this movie. I did a little bit of consulting on the visual effects as we were making the film. It was very minimal. It consisted of looking at certain sets that they already built into the computer and talking about lighting, the direction of the lighting and the direction of the and type of light, the color, the reflectivity of surface. So through the course of the motion capture process that Stephen was very present, I would have discussions with ILM illustrators or whatever you go CGI guys, and would go through conceptual drawings and illustrations and would alter the drawings and illustration to match my aesthetics and my approach towards lighting particular scenes. But it's really, it's very much movie created by Stephen and ILM.
So, but you watch this movie, and the core of this movie are the two worlds, the real world and the virtual world, and eventually they begin to completely interact. They start to interact at the beginning, and it's clear even from this shortcut. We were going to try to show the trailer, we weren't able to, but in the trailer you see a lot more of the intercutting and how the worlds are affecting each other. When you were setting about, you know, lighting Wade's world, the stacks, the different areas he was in, we didn't get to see in this trailer. What was was there a consultation with VFX, with CG as far as, no?
No, really, I mean, the real world, the aim in creating the real world was to create a world that feels a bit bleak, not interesting, a world that would automatically force or direct the population of that world towards fantasy world. So when you look at the reality, it's a little bit, as I said, it's a little bit bleak, a little bit smoky, there's like dirt on the ground. We shot that on film. When you go into fantasy world or the video oasis world, that becomes very contrasty, very colorful, almost clinically clean, but very beautiful to some degree. I find it really attractive. But that's the only contribution I've done in terms of conceptual analysis of two worlds.
We're going to talk a little bit, and you had said you wanted to speak a little bit about the role of post and live action and how they're changing. You know, I mean, obviously post has encroached on live action in many ways, but maybe that will change as more tools come back to the set. What's your thought? Because I'm saying this now because we're about to show a clip from BFG where you had a very different kind of relationship with the CG artists in that movie, because there was live action and mocap and virtual characters together in the same frame, whereas this we really don't. But just quickly before we show BFG, what's your thought about?
Well, I mean, when I did Jurassic Park 2, and I think there were 300 CGI effects, which at that time was unheard of. Now we've got, you know, the whole movie is made 2000. So the technology obviously made it financially feasible, cheaper, and made it available to filmmakers simply because it can reproduce reality to some degree. So I have no really problems with visual effects. To me, it's just a boring process to be on the green stage. So it comes purely from personal comfort. You know, I like reality-based movies that take place on real sets. Now, certain things, obviously, due to technology, would be unheard of 10, 15 years ago, simply because the technology was still very infantile. So the collaboration between the directors, such as when you do motion capture, which is an amazing process, it's fully integrated to the director's job of what it means to direct actors, but yet there is lack of cinematographer simply because everything's done in the post. But as a director, you're still directing actors. As an actor, you're still working with emotional impact of your performance. Again, for me, it's a boring process.
Yeah, I mean, there are tools that our magazine's writing about where they're trying to bring some of those processes back to the set, so actors have immersive, like LED environments that they can work off of.
And I heard that Planet of Apes was done such a way, and also Big Friendly Giant was done very similar way, where there was more integration between them.
We're going to look at the Big Friendly Giant clip and talk about that right afterwards. Can you roll that clip, please?
It was the first movie I've done digitally. In fact, the only movie I've done digitally. So this is all sets. The kid is real. So is the child.
Never get out of bed. Never go to the window. And never look behind the curtain.
The CGI work was integrated in the real action, and also every time you would have the little girl, she would be the real girl on partial sets, and every time you see Big Friendly Giant, which was Mark Rylance, he would be in the motion capture suit, elevated to represent his height, and his emotions, his performance will be captured, which is a real war, captures images. We don't capture images, we let them fly. But his performance will be captured, and that performance will be used to reflect his emotions as he was doing as he was acting with the little girl. So it's a lovely process, yeah.
So when you were doing your work with her on the set, you had a VFX supervisor or somebody?
Correct, yeah.
CG, and how were you?
The technology was just amazing because we have many technicians and artists and visual artists who would help us to make the movie, in a sense that you had to coordinate the sets that are already built in the computer with the live image being fed from digital camera into the monitors, and that the live image would include partial sets, but also the sets would occasionally be already finished within the images that were fed to us. And as you were looking at the monitor, you could truly see what the movie is looking like and what's going to happen later on when the final work is done. But also the most important aspect of this was that the little girl could act with an actor. So there was there's no scenario where she's acting against a tennis ball or a cutout, And for a young girl such as this lady who never acted, this was a very essential aspect for their good performance.
So do you think, as we watch, BFG and Ready Player One, I know you said you don't do a lot of fantasy movies, but we just watched two. That were pretty cool. We talked a little bit before about what has been lost in this transition to pretty much all digital world. Where you look at Saving Private Ryan and you think you had limitations as to what you could do, and from those limitations, maybe some tremendous art was born. There's no limitations in the digital world. There's no limitations in Ready Player One, and that's the point of the Oasis, of course. But we've been heading toward that world, I think, for a while now in movies where visual effects, they're virtually, untethered as far as what they can create for the camera. I want to ask your opinion on whether something's been lost because of that. That you tend to be a cinematographer who likes to create images completely in the camera.
Well, I think some of those images I would not be able to create simply because, it's just a fantasy world, right? But if you look at the old Godzilla with very crude puppets fighting each other, they're just laughable, right? But there's some charm to it, nostalgia. When you look at the new Godzilla where everything looks real, you couldn't basically do that then. So the new technology definitely allowed the viewers to experience movies the way that they would not be able to experience before. But what's disappearing is really the ownership of the images, and it's not that I'm, so narcissistic that I want my image to be printed with my name, but there are too many cooks, so-called, in the kitchen, and so far the results are good, but you've got a good chef here, which is Steven, who's got very sophisticated visual taste. He's a true visionary, and he has proven to be for many, many years. The moment that control, that kind of a director is not part of the process making, the movies become very expensive because nobody's willing to take control of the image. It's relied on other people, and often the cinematographer will be the person in the past who would be responsible for the final image. I would take the image all the way from grading the very crude visual effects to integrating the images into final print and supervising the whole process of creation of the image. That is gone right now, which, it's the reality. It's pointless to talk about the past. This is the reality. Also, I think the state of cinematography is suffering from, the art of cinematography is suffering from lack of vision in terms of telling the stories through light and shadow. Everything becomes a little bit flaccid, in my opinion. Yes, the old man is talking, but I'm not that old. But but it's really, the movies become repetitive. So the visual metaphors are disappearing simply because there are too many cooks, I think. And the art of cinematography is disappearing. But it's gonna come back. We're gonna come back. Not me, I'll be dead by then, but some of you in the future will. So certain movies you're gonna make. Certain movies that you could have made before would look very crude. There's no need to jeopardize actors' lives or stunt people's lives to create spectacular stunt sequences. It all can be done against the green screen. So that's the benefit.
Yeah.
But also I like the mystery of the negative, film negative, where you make the image and the next day you see it and you realize, oh man, I messed it up. Okay, you fix it, and the guy says, I can't really fix it. Now I can fix it. Now if I mess it up, I can fix it.
Are there tools or processes you think that can bring it back to more ownership for the cinematographer, for those younger cinematographers out there who can start to look at their careers that way instead of maybe yielding to this kind of filmmaking?
What makes you to be able to be so unique from the other guys? I have a young protege who's making movies. He's very good. He started making movies as a cinematographer. He just made his little movie and looked great. Looked like shot by top cinematographer. It looked like was shot by top cinematographer. I couldn't tell which one. So the feeling, I said, Bartek, where is you in this? There was no Bartek in the image. It was just really top-notch, amazing photography, but there's no representation of his soul. So I think as an artist, and I find filmmaking, particularly cinematography, to be a very artistic form of expression, and to some degree, I'm the guy who sees the movie the first time. I'm the viewer's eyes to some degree. So that's what I miss when I create an image, live image on film negative. The chances of that image surviving the final process are great. When I do digital image, that image becomes so manipulated by first of all, by the guy who is doing the DIT on the set. Then he goes into a studio. The studio may say, well, we don't like the red thing on it, or we don't like that, we don't like this. It's too bright, too dark. It goes limitless. So the image can be controlled to such a degree, but I don't have the control of controlling the image.
You mentioned that you're essentially the eye of the viewer. I can't think of a better lead-in to the last clip we're going to show. And I think a movie that I sense, Janusz, is maybe has, I don't know, maybe you have particular pride in this movie for some reason. I'm not sure why exactly, but it is an extremely powerful movie. And indeed, the camera, the clip we're going to see, the camera becomes the eye of the main character. The camera becomes literally, the brain, that retention of what that character is seeing. So we're going to show a clip from The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, and we're going to talk about it afterwards. This is the ending scene.
So it's all organic. There's no CGI in this scene. It's all done by...
It's all in camera.
Some Polish guy.
De toute façon, on serait arrivé en retard.
You should see this movie. It's a really good movie, by
Nous
the
irons
way.
demain soir. Et je sombre dans le coma. ESARINTULOMDBCF ESARICCEETULL ESAABCFF ESAARIINDT. Cela fait ESAII ESARINN. 1. Cela fait-il 1 ESARINDULLIIVB? Cela fait-il un livre? Pour Théophile, Céleste et Hortense, en leur souhaitant beaucoup de papillons. Toute ma gratitude va à Claude Mandibule, dont on comprendra en lisant ces pages le rôle primordial qu'elle a joué dans leur écriture. J'ai toujours été là. Les critiques dans mes musiques, j'entends. Tu veux les entendre? Là. trajet de la solitude qui hante l'hôpital maritime de Berck par Bernard Schack. Un livre bouleversant. Jean-Dominique Bobby, 43 ans, journaliste réputé, père de famille, homme libre, projetait d'écrire un roman sur la vengeance au féminin.
So what do we ask from movies? What do we ask from visual storytelling? We ask to be moved, right? We ask to feel something and be emotionally drawn into a world. This is a movie that does that from the first frame to the last. I don't know too many people who've watched this movie and not been moved by it or felt tears inwards or out. The ending scene we just watched represents your and the director's interpretation of the last moments of this man's life. And again, you chose to do it all in camera without any kind of digital effects or anything added to it. Similar to what I asked you at the beginning of this presentation, what was your goal with this particular scene? How did you conceive it, and what were you trying to achieve with it?
I think I was trying to create pictorial representation of, someone who is dying, whose brain is slowly deteriorating, where the brain cells are dying off, and he cannot recognize what's reality, what's dream, what's past, what's present. So I basically had a camera that I was using a hand cranking the camera forward and backwards, depending of how I felt and what was right. So when you see layering of the images, it's actually people coming in and leaving the frame. But yet, because the camera was going forward, they were registered on one layer of the film, and then when I'm rewinding the film, I'm bringing that image back, but yet the other person is coming in. So essentially it's layering the images to create some kind of a emotional response from the viewers, but also make the viewers feel what the main character was experiencing at that given moment. So I'm very proud of this movie simply because, it's a story of a guy who was rather, I wouldn't call him parasite, but the guy perceived life as basically a consumer. He consumed things. He was the head of the Elle magazine. All the women, all the guys, whatever he wanted were there. And then he became paralyzed. And he could only perceive the life by moving his eye. And he discovered humanity. Because you have a choice, right? You can choose what you want to see, and you're discovering sensuality in life without actually being able to taste it. Got emotional. Nice movie.
Yeah. You mentioned when you show this film to film students, as you have, they're surprised.
Oh, they're surprised. Why don't you do it in the post? Why would you do it in the post? I wouldn't know how to do it in the post. There's a great Russian director, Sukurov. He made a movie called Mother's Son, and he's a traditional fellow, very artistic. He says, what's the point of making movies in the post? I make movies in the set. So he would bring glass and he would paint the sets on the movie set that he was photographing, and he would use the old technique of filming through glass plates, to achieve the results. He would tweak the lenses, so the lenses would distort perspective, because that's how he works. Not to say I'm fully like that because I work in America, not in Russia, and movies are very expensive. But the best way to do it is to do it live, as it's in front of you. Same with the music. I don't understand the sampling of the music. I don't understand you all go listen to music by some guy, DJ, whatever his name is, doing this shit with that's not music. That's not music.
So we mentioned Steven Spielberg's name throughout this session, and this movie was directed by Julian Schnabel, who I couldn't think of a more different background than Steven Spielberg to be a filmmaker. He's a fine artist. He doesn't come necessarily from a language of cinema. Maybe he likes movies, I don't know. How did that relationship go with this particular movie and this scene when you were running this by him? What did he was he all good with everything you did and your approach?
Sure, Julian was amazing. He was very respectful. He's a great artist. Whether you like his work or not, that's another story. I love his work. He was very respectful for my work. When I met with Julian, I want to make sure that we're not making experimental movie. That I wanted to make a movie for audience. I love his previous movies. I love Basquiat. I loved Before Night Falls. So he's a bona fide filmmaker, and he should be making movies like that. And he's doing that. He will never do X-Men 3 because that's not what he's interested in. And I'm using X-Men 3 because the director who made X-Men whatever, he made some great movies, but then he got consumed by the money, by the process, by the fame, and and he made great movies before. So don't forget the true reasons why you want to make movies, or if you're going to make movies. It's a tremendous art form. It has potential to change people's lives. It changed my life. It changed lives of thousands of people who living outside this country, who see this country as a role model. Maybe not lately, but prior to that, more on up there. They saw this country as a beacon. That's gone. He'll be replaced, and we go back to where we were 2 years ago.
Okay, I think we have a few minutes left for Q&A, Janusz, so thank you very much.
I left Poland in 1980. I was a relatively young boy. I was 21, so my aesthetics are definitely defined by bleakness of Polish lifestyle. But I don't see myself as a Polish filmmaker. My mood and my upbringing was Polish, but all my education was done here in America. There are great filmmakers coming out of Poland, particularly the guy who made Ida. But then again, Ida, he left at a younger age, went to England and made his movies there. Now he's back in Poland because it's convenient, and he makes good movies there, right? But I think after the process of democratization, there was a tremendous void in storytelling because Poland was not oppressed anymore. So they had to reinvent themselves, and they tried really good, and there's some good movies coming out. Now, am I fully familiar with Polish cinema? Not really. But I'm not familiar with another cinema. They're all American movies now. Nobody's watching foreign movies. When I was watching movies, when I was growing up, there was German cinema, French cinema, Italian cinema, world cinema.
I don't think so.
American cinema.
No.
You go and see Captain America 17.
Okay.
It's a good movie, apparently. It's coming 2 years from now. Okay, right over here. Switching over here.
Hello, sir. You just mentioned you left Poland in 1980. I was born in Poland 4 years later and left it also. I left it when I was 20 back to New York and bought my camera there, and now I live here in Las Vegas.
Not so lucky.
Not so lucky. Again, my life completely inspired by movies, and that's where I take the most of my art from. I have plenty of questions to you. Obviously, we're done with paneling a moment ago. So my question that I could think of that would sum them up is, what do I have to do just to hang out with you for a coffee or something for 15 minutes?
He lives in Malibu, I can tell you that.
That's all. Thank you.
I've got my flight is at 3 o'clock. We can talk after.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, we got one more over here and then one more over here.
Hi, Janusz. How do you think that...
A little place in Malibu. Don't even...
Not a big house.
No, it's not a residential house. I'm just a cinematographer. It's a small little house, 1,700 square feet.
Small house.
How do you think that longer takes and better blacking has helped give some of your and Steven's earlier work more heart and soul?
Well, I think because every time you do a cut, that's a good question. Every time you do a cut, you're disrupting the whole process of reality. Look at The Post, which is a really good movie, how cleverly he blacked the scene. You have many principal actors in the scene who are of consequence. Previously, we would have, in Lincoln, you would have main guy with secondary characters. So there was only one hero. Here, you've got really, really good actors in many scenes. So his blacking became altered. He altered his blacking so he could reflect the importance of the scene and also the reality of the scene. It almost felt like doing a play. Steven likes to black sequences and scenes so everything happens in one shot, because he believes rightfully that every time you put a cut, you're taking the audience away from reality. And if we're in the business of creating reality, even with Ready Player One, there's some aspect of reality, or reality that audience can identify with. He wants to engage you in the story, and he thinks there's a reason you do a cut. So he doesn't have that many close-ups in his movies, because when he's using a close-up, he has to have the proper emotional impact, you know.
Really?
But the Poles would say, hey, we used to make movies, you know, in a certain way, long takes, you know, blah, blah. Long takes, they don't have money for film, so they had to do long takes. There's just, when film negative was very expensive, you do it economically, so you have a big master shot, because you only had 50,000 feet of film, you know. So you would make long shots, and everything would be in one shot. The moment they come to America, they start using, you know, editing. They start cutting the things because they have resources to do it. But I like the big masters, you know. And he's the one, Steven is the one that when we have a master, it's going to be in the shot. I certainly done scenes with other directors where you do a big, beautiful master, and then you'd go and chop it up with the close-ups, you know. And there's a reason I work with the guy. He's a true filmmaker.
Well, we should get a shout out to Mitch Dubin, who's the A-camera operator for Steven, and who you saw a lot of in that Saving Private Ryan scene, Mitch Dubin. Our last question will be from Stephen Poster, who is the president of ICG, International Cinematographers Guild.
You know, as this great interview has been sponsored by the International Cinematographers Guild Local 600, can tell this young audience how important the union has been to you.
Oh, it is essential, because otherwise we'll be exploited to the point of not being able to have a decent lifestyle. So the union creates certain moral standards, it's certain protection, and I'm not bullshitting right now. I mean, I've been really aware of my friends who are being exploited working for very little money. They give you a certain stability, they give you
Healthcare.
They give you healthcare, they give you minimum wages, which are good. Minimum wages are good. If you're able to get there and work, you have a decent lifestyle. And I think it's just, you know, being part of industry, and the union really helps you to feel like really you are part of it.
Great.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to get in.
Okay, when I was younger, it was hard.
It was, yeah, for all of us.
Now it's easier. Now we have to do it. We have to open the doors, because there's guys with video cameras are coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.